Hello, in today's video I will show you how to set up a wireless connection inside Qubes. So the first step would be to create a new NetVM similar to the sysnet. So if you take a look at those settings on the devices tab, you will see that there is a Ethernet controller passed on to the virtual machine. So basically this virtual machine has the Ethernet card, and that way all the other virtual machines have a network connection. So we can either install the wireless card inside this, or we can create a new virtual machine, and that's the way I do it usually. Then I select Fedora and turn it into a NetVM and click on OK. And now we have to find a way to pass on the device to this sys Wi-Fi. So there are two ways. There are basically two types of devices. One attached to the PCI bus, that's common in laptops with built-in network cards. And then there is USB based ones. So if you have a PCI device, you simply open the terminal, enter ls-PCI, and you look for your card. For example, this would be my Ethernet network card, and I can simply pass that on to this virtual machine, to the sys Wi-Fi, and then configure the network manager. You will see the network manager configuration at the end of the video. But in my example, I have a USB device, so I can do a ls USB. And here I can find my realtek adapter. So as a first note, that whole process here is not going to work with USB 3.0. So I went to the BIOS and disabled USB 3.0. So it's now at USB 2. Okay, so we have the USB, and we have two different buses. This is bus number 1, and those devices form bus number 2. So what you can do basically is pass on a whole bus, but you cannot pass on a single device to a virtual machine. So if, for example, you have your mouse and your keyboard on the same bus as you would have your wireless card, you could try plugging it into a different port on the back or on the front of your computer, and maybe you end up on a different bus. But if that's not possible, we have to take further steps, and we have to create a so-called USB cube. So what is a USB cube? A USB cube is another virtual machine, and we basically pass on the whole bus to this cube. And if we have a mouse and a keyboard, we have to do some additional steps to make sure that we can still move it, so that the DOM0 still has access to the USB devices, which would be inside that USB cube then. So I will demonstrate a way to do it if you basically have the your keyboard and your mouse on the same bus as if you had the Wi-Fi adapter. So the first command would be to start it. And then we can take a look at how to use a USB keyboard. And here we will find that there are files. And in here we have a few policies defined. So there are two files that interest me, the input keyboard and the input mouse. So if I take a look inside those files, let's start with the input keyboard. Then we will find any VM deny. So that means that you cannot pass on the device to another virtual machine. And they suggest to do something like sys USB DOM0 ask user equals root. So I tried that and I ended up with a system that didn't gave me a pop-up to ask me, but my mouse and my keyboard didn't work, so I couldn't select yes. So what I do instead is I simply go and delete that part and type in allow. So this allows the DOM 0 to use the USB devices for the keyboard which are attached to the sys USB. And then I do the same for the mouse file. Okay, and now I go back up and go to creating and using a USB cube. And now I can run the second command to apply the configuration. And it tells us this automatically hides all USB controllers from DOM 0. So now that we've set up those two files, we should be able to continue using the mouse and the keyboard after enabling the virtual machine. And we are getting an error here, and it tells us a VM with the name sysusb does not exist on the system. So if we scroll up here, you can see an error saying no default template VM defined. That is probably because of my last update from Fedora 23 to Fedora 24. So I don't have a Fedora 23 virtual machine anymore, which was my default one. And now I'm going to set it to Fedora 24. Then I go back and run the command again. And this time it worked. So if we now run a qvm USB command, you will see that we have no devices listed, and that is because we didn't start it yet. So I'm going to start this virtual machine now. And my keyboard and mouse stopped functioning. But now I can press my keyboard, and now my mouse is working again. So we can go back and type another qvm-usb, and now you will see that there is still a device, and that is the realtek device. And now there is a way which describes how to attach a single USB device to a cube, and that's only working with Qubes 3.2. And they also noticed that there are security implications from using that way, because it's going to expose your target cube. Okay, so now we do have the address, and now we can use the qvm usb-a command to forward the device to our sys Wi-Fi. And we simply select this one over here. And we get the error that sys Wi-Fi is not running. So let's start sys Wi-Fi. And run the command again. And now it's being attached to the virtual machine. So let's start up a terminal. And in here we can find the realtek wireless adapter device. And down here we got a pop-up. and the pop-up is going to show us the networks around here, and you can start using your device. So if we look back from the point where we passed on the device, we used the QVM minus USB tool. So if you have a PCI device, just use QVM minus PCI minus A to attach the device to the virtual machine. And from there, the network manager already started and picked it up. And you can simply then connect to the network in question. And there we go, we have a connection. So if you want to use your Wi-Fi device, then you select the virtual machine in question and select the sys Wi-Fi as a NetVM down here like this, and then you click OK. So there is one more step we have to do at the end, and I will explain you what it is. If we take a look at the grub config, and here to the module line, you will see that there has been something has been appended. RD Qubes hide all USB. So what this does is basically when we start up the computer, it adds another layer of security. So then during the boot phase, that nobody can go to your computer, plug in a malicious USB device and own your computer. But if we want to use our mouse and keyboard, and the mouse and the keyboard is on the same bus, we cannot do that because we need to enter the password after the encryption, and we need to enter the username and password when logging into Qubes. So we basically have to remove that. Hold on, let me see, maybe it's inside a default file. Yeah, so here in the grub command line Linux, we have basically the old line, and they are appending this part. So I'm going to remove the part from here, and then I'm going to use grub2 mkconfig -o boot grub2 grub.config. So now it's generating a new grub file based on the defaults I changed. And now we can take a look again to make sure that it's gone. So now the part is not here anymore, and now we can basically restart our computer. So I hope this helped some of you out there, and if you like information like that, hit the subscribe button. Talk to you soon.